Modern artists strive to establish an interactive relationship between their artworks and the audience. Take, for instance, Richard Serra's 1981 sculpture Tilted Arc. Imagine walking through a city plaza. You might encounter a bronze statue, perhaps a hero on horseback, or a towering marble monument. You might glance at it, or perhaps not even notice its presence, as it is just one of many city markers commemorating a piece of the past. In 1981, artist Richard Serra installed his sculpture Tilted Arc in New York City's Federal Plaza. Serra aimed for pedestrians to have an unusual relationship with this public sculpture. Tilted Arc was a 12-foot high, 120-foot long, 15-ton steel plate that bisected Manhattan's Federal Plaza, dividing the space in half. People working in nearby buildings had to navigate around its massive bulk as they crossed the plaza. Serra was less interested in the aesthetic appeal of the sculpture than in how pedestrians would physically experience it. He said, "It is a viewpoint. The observer becomes aware of their interaction with the sculpture as they move through the plaza. The visual image of the sculpture changes with their movement." Serra, along with many other minimalist artists, believed that the audience is situated in a constantly changing dynamic viewpoint rather than being a static observer. For instance, from certain vantage points, Tilted Arc might appear as a set of lyrical curves, while to others, it might seem a massive barrier. Tilted Arc was commissioned by the General Services Administration (GSA) as part of its Art in Architecture program, which allocated 0.5% of the total cost of federal building constructions for artworks. Upon its installation, controversy ensued. Serra argued that public art was meant to reveal, not beautify, public spaces.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between pieces that are in museums and galleries and institutions that have a morality and a knowledge of who the audience is, and ones that are without any ideological overtone that doesn't point back to the art world. Although I think it's probably impossible to get away from a frame completely. There are some sites which I prefer that aren't either what you would characterize as public or private, in that they're just leftover sites. I think one of the problems you have with most public sculpture.
This stance made Tilted Arc an immediate target for critics upon its installation. Art critic Grace Glueck of the New York Times called it an awkward piece of trickery. Employees from 2 government agencies in Federal Plaza collected 1,300 signatures requesting the sculpture's removal, and a judge started a petition to eliminate the 175,000 artwork, but to no avail. The debate was reignited 4 years later when William Diamond became the head of the GSA. Diamond's company hosted a public forum on Tilted Arc.
This I consider an atrocity.
I think it's ugly. It's a big rusty wall just standing there.
I think it has absolutely no artistic merit. I think it was a big ripoff.
Where 180 individuals from Federal Plaza, including art critics, artists, curators, and others, expressed their opinions. Experts estimated the cost of dismantling the sculpture at $35,000, with an additional $50,000 for relocation.
I thought that the way that the government treated me as a private individual was outrageous. I mean, completely outrageous. Complete disdain for me and my work. I thought it was...
Serra insisted that the sculpture in the plaza was a specific artwork, and removing it from the plaza would be equivalent to destroying it. If the sculpture were relocated, he would remove his signature from it. A public hearing was held in March 1985, where 122 people testified in favor of keeping the sculpture, and only 58 were in favor of its removal. Artists, museum directors, and critics testified to the greatness of Tilted Arc as a work of art. Another New York Times critic, Michael Berenson, wrote, "Tilted Arc is indeed confrontational, but it is also a tender, silent, and secretive piece of art." Supporters of the sculpture argued that removing it on the demands of a minority would infringe on freedom of speech. Some believed that artworks only become masterpieces after initial controversy, citing Manet's Olympia as an example. Most of those opposing the sculpture worked in Federal Plaza, saying it interfered with public use of the space. They also criticized it for attracting graffiti, rats, and even terrorists who might use it as a blast wall for bombs.
What is art and what is artistic expression is not the issue before us today. The issue is, what is the governmental responsibility in arriving at a decision to place art that is paid for with public funds in a public plaza or other public place?
In fact, the choice of the artist, approval of the sculpture, and the decision to install it permanently in the plaza was made by a public entity, the GSA. Its determination proceeded on the basis of national standards, carefully formulated procedures, and a jury system to ensure the impartiality and the selection of art of lasting value. The selection of the sculpture was made by and on behalf of the public. The question then is whether a public decision can be reversed by this hearing after the fact. Either building.
Before the imposition of this steel wall, the plaza served as a pleasant and humane open space for federal employees, citizens of New York, and visitors to this great city. The plaza and fountain were designed for and enjoyed by the people who live and work here. Contrary to the original intention and purpose, the wall now intimidates and prevents everyone from fully utilizing the plaza.
In response to the GSA's request to build a permanent sculpture, I studied the Federal Plaza carefully and noted that half of the plaza was given to a non-working fountain. And it was my concern not to interfere with this space and the paths that lead to, from, and around the fountain. I also ensured that the remaining half of the space was left open for social functions of any kind. It is bogus and false to say that the social function of the plaza is destroyed. It is false to say that, as Mr. Diamond has said, that it's impossible to use for the public and federal community to use the plaza. Also, the experience of art itself is a social function. It is curious to me that people who are concerned with function can't even put water in their fountain.
Now, how can an artist give wholeheartedly of him or herself if we are not sure that the government is speaking the truth? If the government is a chameleon who at whim can decide that they're going to destroy a work of art that we've created.
A 5-member jury led by Diamond eventually voted to remove the sculpture. After Serra's appeal failed, federal workers cut Tilted Arc into 3 pieces on the night of March 15, 1989, and moved it to a scrapyard. The judgment on Tilted Arc raised questions about public art that stirred increasing controversy in the late 1980s and early 1990s in the United States and abroad: the role of government funding, the rights of artists over their works, the public's role in determining the value of art, and whether public art should be protected and respected were all part of the heated debate. Despite the controversy, Serra's art career continued to flourish. He stated, "I don't believe the function of art is to make one feel good. Art is not democratic. It's not for the people." Dubbed the poet of steel, has works permanently housed in museums worldwide. Regarding interacting with open sculpture artworks, I have this experience. At the 2017 FIAC Contemporary Art Fair in Paris, an outdoor sculpture Onde 2017 by Florian Pugner and David Rafani was displayed in the Jardin des Tuileries. This 20-meter-long piece, similar to Serra's tilted arc, altered its shape and the reflections of light and shadow as you moved past it, embodying the rhythmic waves of release. This is precisely the awareness of the relationship between oneself and the sculpture that Serra spoke of.